I'm the one about Andy White and Ian Glenn, who are going to talk to you about their products, which I've seen in the past, and they're very impressive. But what I thought I'd do, given the sort of broad canvas of today's conference agenda, would say a little bit first about the NPIA and where we've got to. Secondly, talk about mobile data, which is what I'm here to talk about, and I'm going to share some of the delights that was an appearance before the Public Accounts Committee in February of this year. And then thirdly, just talk about the future of technology and technological innovation in policing. And to start with the NPIA, I should correct my billing on the conference programme. You noticed the last time I speak as Chief Executive of the NPIA, and do so as a bit of a fraud on the basis that I've already left. And I'm currently, my day job, I'm helping the new first ever non-police Chief Inspector of Constabulary, Tom Windsor, to settle into his role. And he and I are working together to create a set of criteria and procedures for inspectors of constabulary. He brings, of course, a long background as a corporate lawyer and rail regulator to the role, and we're having a fascinating time just setting out what will the promise of the police service be of the inspectorate of constabulary. Why did I leave the NPIA? Because the job was done. You go back to the time I took over in the summer of 2010, we were an organisation spending around £500 million each year, employing around 2,200 people. In July of 2010, the Home Secretary Theresa May announced that the agency was to close. There was then a kind of pause when we didn't quite know what would happen with its functions, and we needed a period of reflection and research and thought about what would come next. Then the decision started to come, and actually the momentum of that change has increased over the intervening period, to the point where now, indeed in about 3 days' time, staff will transfer into the College of Policing. And what has happened, you hear from Trevor Pearce later on, I think, well, he's received, they at Serious Organised Crime Agency have received around 200 of our staff who will sit at the Serious Organised Crime Agency and then head off into the National Crime Agency when it's launched towards the end of 2013. There's another chunk of around 700 or 800 staff who've headed into the Home Office, a proportion of whom, quite a large proportion of whom, are ultimately destined for the Police ICT company, which I shall say a little bit about later on. And then the third big chunk of staff will form the core of the new College of Policing. It's to be led by my friend Alex Marshall, the current Chief Constable of Hampshire, and Alex will lead the College of Policing, which I think is probably, it's fair to describe it as the subject of increasing excitement and optimism in the police service. I think people feel genuinely that it represents a substantial opportunity moving forward. And then there's going to be about 70 or so people left at the end of all that, whose job it is to pay the bills, collecting all the mobile phones, switch off the lights, and make sure that the annual report appears in the spring of next year, because the law says it must. And the agency will be formally abolished by the end of 2013. I hope, to further quick reflection on the NPIA, I hope that whatever comes next is given a chance. It was very interesting, a piece of work done the other week, to look at what proportion of the last 2 decades has been genuinely stable in the national policing landscape. And you won't be surprised to learn that actually 11 of the last 20 years have been the subject of some form of formal transition in the national policing landscape, be that in the technological landscape, Police Information Technology Organisation, etc., or in the national training landscape, where we've had Centrex, National Police Training, and NPIA. That's not counting the start-up phase of new embryonic organisations. Arguably, an organisation in its first year, or indeed in its first 2 years, can't be expected to be fully effective. If you say, take that as a kind of 18-month leading period as a halfway point between the two, then the figure jumps up to around 16 and a half of the last 20 years we've been in transition. Anybody who follows football, look at what Chelsea keep doing with their managers. I'm sorry, I know it's kind of laddish and frowned on, to use football analogies, but they're the only ones I understand. If you look at what Chelsea have done over the last few years, they never settle down, they never give the guy a chance to make an impact. Look in contrast at Manchester United, Sir Alex, and the great success he's had. Of course, tens of millions help, but Chelsea have had that too. I think there's just something about giving an organisation, giving a set of structures a chance to settle down and succeed. But I do wish them well. There's really good people. The people of the NPIA who will fundamentally staff the College of Policing, the Police ICT organisation, the Home Office technology elements that were formerly ours, and those functions that moved on into the Serious Organised Crime Agency. Have been frankly fantastic over the last 2.5 years, at a time when one could have understood, if not forgiven, them for feeling a bit grumpy, having their noses put out of joint, going through very worrying times. They might have been very much focused on their own individual futures. Actually, the opposite focus has been the case, and they've been incredibly dedicated and professional. And I have nothing but praise for them. And actually, the consequence of that is that their agency, even in closing, has become more efficient, has become more effective. It's delivered policing, it's delivered massive projects to policing. I heard the last speaker making reference to Police National Database. Well, the size of that undertaking is quite enormous. The technological challenge associated with joining up the intelligence systems of all police forces in England and Wales, as well as Ulster, Scotland, British Transport Police, etc., has been quite remarkable, and it's been achieved on time and on budget. Let's move on to mobile data in policing, and the specific initiative that I've been asked to talk about, and I think it's a kind of instructive case study about it tells us a lot about police technology, is the mobile data announcement made by Prime Minister Brown at a party conference a few years ago. He stood up and told the assembled multitude of the Labour Party conference, not long after he'd become Prime Minister, that he was going to find the cash to equip tens of thousands of officers with mobile data terminals that they would have with them out in the streets, and that we would do that within an accelerated time frame. And that's exactly what we did. We equipped over 50,000 officers and staff, and we confirmed that users actually increased their visibility. The evaluation of this was criticised by the Public Accounts Committee. It was criticised in the report by the National Audit Office, but ultimately nobody disputed that it had increased visibility of officers, and it was one of these kind of seed corn funding initiatives that were popular at the time when we thought we could afford it. The problem with the exercise was actually trying to corral the police service to behave as a single customer. You'll hear from Andy White in a minute about some of the things that he's been able to achieve working with individual forces. But I know from the occasional contact I have with Andy that it really is donkey work. And actually you're dealing with individual forces. They're departing from separate positions in terms of their technological platform and legacy systems. They procure independently of one another. They do that at different times. They sign separate service contracts. And it's this landscape of 43 forces spending around 1.2 billion on technology, with around 5,000 staff and around 2,000 applications, not purchasing together, makes the police service very difficult to deal with, a very illogical partner to deal with. And I shall talk a little bit in a moment about what we might do about that. But going back to mobile data, the real pressure coming out of number 10 was to spend that money quickly and to keep the promise. The promise was about the number of data terminals on the streets. And actually, anybody who sat down and said, well, there's perhaps a better way of doing this, perhaps we ought to just slow down and think about it. We could do something more fundamental. We're reminded by the advisors that that's not what the Prime Minister had said at a conference, nor indeed would it be a particularly eye-catching or memorable conference announcement that we were going to go back and have a really careful think. And instead it was this focus on a numerical target of getting the data terminals out on time. Forces, of course, didn't start from the same position, and some forces, bear in mind this was, I think, 2008, forces weren't as equipped as they would be today to actually deliver this data. You can't just go and start from scratch, because you need to link the data terminals that you've bought to the systems that you've got back at the office. I remember being charged with the responsibility of rolling out neighbourhood policing across Thames Valley Police in 2006 through to 2008. And we were doing this on our own before even the government cash was made available, although we seized on the cash as soon as it was made available. And the constant question that we were asking of our technological people was, what's going to be different in the hands of a neighbourhood officer on the street? What are you going to pipe into this device that will make them better at their job, that will make them more responsive to communities, that will make them better informed and more able to deploy in a manner that is driven by intelligence and information rather than instinct and trust in good fortune. And that was a really healthy but difficult debate that we had all the time with our technological people. And some forces were in a much worse position than we. The funding was actually allocated on the basis of one's ability to spend it. It didn't go to the areas of greatest need, it went to the areas where the cash could be got out the door sufficiently quickly. So actually what happened was, and Thames Valley was a good example of this, we had forces that were already in a decent position, but their position was then enhanced by the availability of cash, again driven by the numerical target. My experience is that the sort of things that were most useful about this were very generic things like the email and calendar, which of course even police forces didn't think they needed to be designed for themselves. They were happy to accept the generic Microsoft product by and large. But getting some of the sort of fiddly force systems onto the device was harder and wasn't such a resounding success. The evaluation from the National Audit Office did acknowledge that some cashable savings were released. Of course, at the time, cashable didn't always mean cashed. And now we live, as you'll all be aware, in very different times when the mere whiff of something being cashable results in it being cashed straight away. Forces broadly adopted two approaches. There were those forces which said, look, transform later, we just want to get what officers see in the workplace onto a device so they can operate out in the street. Other forces did try to transform end-to-end processes. They did a lot of work using variations of lean methodology. They did, I think, have greater success in realising back office savings, and they were better at phasing their capability, but they had a higher training need. We went on to the Permanent Secretary, former Permanent Secretary from the Home Office, the DG for Crime and Policing Group, and me to the Public Accounts Committee to explain how this had all worked. And the Public Accounts Committee were very critical of the fact that we had not exerted a stronger grip at the centre to ensure best value for the taxpayer. And it was a very interesting policy challenge which continues to this day. By the time we were having this debate, we were at a hearing in February of 2012, we were discussing a policy from the previous administration. The Public Accounts Committee appeared united in criticism of the lack of central grip, and yet everything that had happened in policy terms in the intervening period had the effect of reducing the ability of the centre to have a grip. And I think those of us interested in technology in policing and how it can benefit frontline policing need to kind of keep this debate going. How does one generate scale? How does one facilitate consolidation? How do you ensure or promote the idea of a joined-up police service when there are so many vested interests in that police service whose careers and whose livelihoods depend on it remaining fragmented? And it was a very difficult sell to the Public Accounts Committee to say that actually this represented the high watermark of central grip and central coordination of police technology. And in the time since then, we've been largely dismantling much of the machinery that enables there to be a grip from the centre, which poses us a challenge, by no means an insurmountable challenge, but a challenge for the future. I'll move on and say a little bit about the future of technology in policing. I've already set out some of the reasons why we are a hard market to deal with. We're a difficult customer when viewed as a collective. We now have police and crime commissioners, and it remains to be seen the extent to which police and crime commissioners will drive consolidation in police technology in the interests of reducing cost. The Home Office did, in fairness to it, over the decade to 2007, 2008, achieve a reasonable amount in terms of consolidation. It set the ball rolling with NPIA on the Police National Database. Airwave, for example, the police communications system, was a single system, but it achieved that consolidation largely through the use of financial incentives. And so it would go to police forces and say, there's a national system coming down the track, we'd really like you to be part of it, and what's more, we'll pay for it. You don't have to be part of it, you can follow an alternative approach, but you'll have to pay for that yourselves. And forces, not surprisingly, found that a fairly compelling and attractive argument and took the incentive. But when it came to consolidating that which was already in existence, and that which was in existence locally, forces had less appetite to do it. And the simple scale of getting 43 to do anything that is technical and difficult at a time that might not suit them all is terribly challenging. Just look at the difficulty we've had with the National Police Air Service, which finally launched a couple of months ago, but it took years and years and years to get everybody in a place where they would agree to that. And doing it with technology is, if anything, harder. So while there are a few bright spots, look at the work that the Athena forces of the East of England have done to buy collectively a significant system. It is really laudable, but actually it is incredibly difficult. So the Home Office, which has some success, but is kind of rowing itself out of this game. ACPO and NPIA working together on the ISIS programme, which I used to lead. Again, has some success, delivered some programmes, but didn't really achieve full-on consolidation to the extent that we aimed for. Moving forward, where do the best chances of consolidation lie? There is the new police ICT company that's been launched. Several in the room will no doubt have heard of that. I should declare an interest. I sit on the board of that company, and you see the Einstein quote we've seen there. I think the challenge with the police ICT company is to do something different and to break the cycle that has proved so challenging for us in the past. I guess that the way we will seek to achieve that is through the efforts of the police and crime commissions. And we hope, we aspire to getting them early, presenting them with the illogical nature of the current set of arrangements and the potential of this company, and hoping that before they get kind of sucked into the ways of the local force, we can make the case for consolidation. The jury is, of course, still out on that. If not the police ICT company, then I think there's a big role for industry in this, the actual supplier side. Some suppliers have already seen the value of consolidation. I remember having conversations with Niche, a Canadian supplier of record management systems, crime intelligence systems, and saying, why don't you get the 13 forces that currently use Niche together in one place and show them a graph that says, here is your cost trajectory. If you carry on buying from us the way you buy from us so far, this is what it's going to cost you to the end of the spending review period in the spring of 2015. If you buy differently, if you consolidate, if you have a single service agreement on your collective behalf, if you reduce that variability and your kind of personal bespoke niche requirements in individual forces, and you buy as a single customer, this is what that cost reduction could look like. And I think that's where industry can play a huge role. It has capital, it has skills, and it can also provide a consolidating force. There's also some energy behind night works. I'm going to take 2 more minutes if that's okay. There's some energy behind night works, which is a successful concept from the military about corralling and bringing innovation and investment together in one place. And my colleague at the inspectorate, Steve Otter, is doing some work just to test the possibility of taking the night works concept into policing. And my friend Will Wasserman is back on the scene. He spent some time off the policing scene in terms of his advisory role, because he was involved in selecting candidates for the Police and Crime Commissioner elections. He's now back and proposing some kind of a police technology foundation, albeit he's not got a name for it yet, but he's working hard on that, and I'll be happy to help him. So my summary is, in terms of the future of police technology, the challenges are still pretty much the same. We need to make sure that our activities, whether it's Nightworks, the Police ICT Company, or Wasserman's Foundation, or simply the behavioural forces, or indeed our partners in industry, are intelligent enough to make us adaptable to meet those challenges. Look beyond the end of spending review, and as you have all seen, the financial prognosis is not getting any better. So the OECD halved the prediction for economic growth this year the other day, but the signs are pretty gloomy, and we need to be really imaginative about how we spend our money in policing, and that spend on technology is still too high. It's actually eminently addressable, but we need intelligence, thoughtfulness, and a willingness to change in order to meet the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much.